Hi Anti-Society, welcome back to the Antisocial Planet. Today we are getting to part 2 of the Tree of Language reaction, and I still haven't recovered from the last one. Honestly, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still going through all of the stages of just trying to process what the first half of this album was, and now we're going to the second part. I would say right up front, get a drink, get a snack. We're gonna be here a minute, getting some stretches, because this is gonna be a long one again. And also want to say up front that I know that Xian's solo Paradise is on this album, but I've already listened to it. So just in case you get to the end of this reaction and you're wondering where Paradise is, I've already heard it. So you can go check that out. It's already up on the channel. So we're just going to get into this because the first song is Jazz Bar, and I cannot put into words how incredibly excited I am to finally hear this song. So let's just get into it. I don't know if I'm prepared for what this song is going to be because I love jazz so much. So the jazz being in the title already makes me excited. I've had people mention that I'm not ready for this song, and I'm just hesitant, but also incredibly excited. Oh god, it is jazzy. Ooh. That bass? Super staccato piano keys too. No. Between the bass, the jazziness, the percussion, these fun staccato piano keys, I was already in it. I love how there's a big musical section right at the beginning of the song. These vocal melodies, very like breathy in the lower range. Honestly, I blacked out a little bit when Gio started to sing. This is like a long song too. It's fine. I like the guitar too. That vibrato? Okay, I know we're getting into the chorus. I love how subdued these lyrics are, like really bringing it down in terms of the feeling of it. And I think that fits so well because we have Jazz Bar, right? Which is of course a small bar venue. And they're even talking about in Gahyun's line of, I want to stop my singing. I'm assuming that they're in the performer role. They're performing at a jazz bar, like within the narrative of the song, and they see this person in the audience that grabs their attention and it flusters them in the middle of this performance. And anyone who has been in a small venue, like jazz bar kind of venue, they're very small, they're very controlled, and jazz in general is supposed to be, at least in those settings, is supposed to be a little bit more subdued and more of a background entertainment to the actual environment. So the fact that they have these very pulled back vocals very much fits with that environment, because you have to sing to fill a venue, which is something that you practice a lot when you're live performing. Is the size of the venue is going to change the way that you're singing. So if you're in a huge stadium and you have a song that has a lot of energy behind it and is for that live setting of a stadium, something like Scream, you're going to have a very different vocal delivery than something that you are singing in a small venue like a bar, which is far closer up to the audience, and it wouldn't make sense for you to have this huge rock ballad feeling to your vocals when you're in that smaller environment, and also you're trying to blend into the background a little bit. And I think it also fits with the narrative of being flustered by seeing this person, that you would be pulling back a little bit because you're not quite sure of what you're feeling or what's happening, and you're more self-conscious because of this person's attention. Love it though. I love their vocals so much. I love the cry that you can put on one of her onsets of her phrase that just put a little bit of something into her like texture for her vocals. This is everything I could have wanted. I never thought I would get a full jazz song like this with Dreamcatcher. I know I got 4 with Yuhyun, which still sends me into orbit every time I hear it, but this is like a completely different vibe. I don't know if I'll survive though.
멈추고 다가가서 속삭이고 싶어져 oh 나 I feel I love you oh I love you oh I like you do I know you oh I think I love you oh I love you oh I like you maybe you feel it too.
My gosh, I love that we're getting lower range, especially considering that jazz, a lot of the time the vocalists are like crooners, which is a very lowered voice box placement, and the vowels are held farther back in the mouth. In general, you're going to get a little bit of a deeper sound, which is a lot of fun, especially since one of the reasons that you sing in a crooner voice is because of the microphones at the time, which is one of my favorite fun facts. It's just that the way that you recorded music, the way that mics picked up a voice, you had to have a very specific resonance to your voice. So having that crooner placement was just a way of having your voice get picked up better by microphones, which is a technical thing that I love that it's just changing the way that you sing strictly to fit with the technology limitations is such an interesting thing to me. Anyway, but they're fitting into that feeling of having that deeper tone and just like the darker colors to their voices just fits with like the jazz. I also love all the little vibratos that they're putting in and these moments where they're putting in more breathiness, especially at the end of words. Like we had the I love you, that you, they're putting lots of breath and letting it, suspending that word out a little bit. It's just really nice, especially with the lyric of I want to whisper to you. Putting in that breathier sound softens it out, makes it sound a little bit more like a whisper tone. I know I'm in love. I know that's what I'm feeling right now.
Love you. Oh, I love you. Oh, I like you. Do I know you? Oh, I think I love you. Oh, I love you. Oh, I like you. Maybe you feel it too. 아주 작은 움직임조차 가능하게 돼버렸어 난. Baby you know it. 알아 baby you know it. 어쩜 우린 비슷할지 모르죠. 같은 생각을 하며 뭔가를 바라고 있는 것만 같아.
No. That vocal run. Okay, no. I know I'm going back and I'm pausing a lot. Just let me process this, okay? It feels strange because jazz to me mellows me out and just puts me into this very calm. I feel so much of myself. Listening to jazz, it's just like a very comforting thing for me that like it's a very different feeling than something like Red Sun, which like affects me in a different way, right? So it's difficult for me to fully process what I'm feeling because I'm centered in myself. I just feel at home here. But I love this kind of flip up that Xian was doing with her vocal melody. I love that we're putting in some more kind of space in between the instrumentation as well. I love this guitar melody that's going through the whole thing. And again, just love the uses of the vibrato in very specific parts. It just adds a little something to it. But I think that it also fits really well with talking about being a little bit self-conscious around this person, saying even the tiniest movements, being very aware of this person and very self-conscious in the gaze of that person, to have that kind of waver in your voice and have those notes lack strength in a way, because if you have something that's very steady held note, there's a certain confidence and power behind that, whereas having that vibrato warbles it and it mimics the shaking of a voice when you're trying to communicate with this person. But oh, it's so good. Okay, love that flip up. The bass though, beautiful vocal run. Oh, the ad-libs. No, because the ad-libs in the back, the like vocal runs and everything, which also very much fits with jazz of improvisation and just feeling the music in the moment. The bass though, the bass, I could feel it through my whole body. And just, I love that we're getting some Dami vocals too, especially since she has a very light breathy tone anyway. I think that just blends in really well with the tone that they're all going for in the song. And I like that every once in a while, Xian and Yuhyun specifically will just get a little bit more closure, which is why Yuhyun was getting a little bit of a cry in some of hers, is that she's just tightening up her vocal cords a little bit more. And again, it's just adding those moments of a little bit of texture. They'll do it for a couple of words where they'll just really get a little bit more of a more closed sound. And it just helps build up the energy of the song without doing anything crazy with it. And I love how mellowed out it is. It's found that groove and it's just gonna stay there. And I love that so much.
I think I love you. Oh, I love you. Oh, I like you. Maybe you feel it. 혹시 지금 그때 내게
Ooh.
다가올 거라면 망설이지 말고 와줘. 어색한 인사는 우리 하지 않기로 해요. 오래된 연인처럼.
No. Look, just let me have this, okay? I don't think I need to justify myself. Y'all knew when you got into this that I was gonna be like going through all of this. I love, okay, the one that we have the mix up in the instrumentation. I love the little, I don't know, keys or whatever that ended off that bridge. But I love the fall off that they're doing in their vocals, where they're like going up and then the note falls off at the end of the phrase. Love that. Like it just adds like this little extra thing to it. And I think that it just, again, blends into this kind of like dreamy, very mellow energy to have the end of your phrase just fall off. Like, it lacks the strength to finish itself off in a way, but I mean that in the most complimentary way possible. Like, I love it. It just adds to this kind of dreamy, I don't know, it has like a daydreaming feeling to it, that you're like meandering through all of these different thoughts and observations about this person and wanting them to approach you and hoping that they're thinking the same way that you are. And the fact that it's Dami, I hope it's Dami vocals. I know that lyric videos aren't always the most accurate, but it sounds like her to me. I also love the line of let's skip awkward greetings like an old couple. Let's just skip to the part where we're super comfortable around each other and we can just launch into more meaningful discussion than awkwardly finding our footing with each other. I think that's just a really cute image.
Oh, I love you. Oh, I like you. Maybe you feel it. 혹시 지금 그때 내게 다가올 거라면 망설이지 말고 와줘. 어색한 인사는 우리 하지 않기로 해요.
I love the way she lightens up her voice there too.
연인처럼. I feel I love you. Oh, I love you.
The ad-libs though.
Oh, I like you. You, I know you. Oh, I think I love you. Oh, I love you. Oh, I like you. Maybe you feel it too. Ooh, 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 ooh.
No, I need a second. Because we had a little bit of scatting earlier on, and then those vocalizations. Yuhyun and Jazz will be the death of me. But what a beautiful way to go, honestly. I love all of the layered vocals too, where they're all singing together, but it's this very breathy, light sound that it just like, it all blends together really nicely. Just, okay, I'm gonna be listening to the song so much. Ugh. And I mean in the most complimentary way possible, but like, how dare they? Honestly, I'm just sitting here loving Jazz, loving Dreamcatcher, thinking that the only way that I will truly ever experience that is in like little spurts of obviously influence from Jazz, maybe Yuhyun with her solo, which was a wonderful surprise when I got to it. I really did not know what I was getting into walking into that song, and it continues to be something that if you want to instantly put me into a good mood, that song. This is all I needed. This with all of them, minus Handang, but I'm pretty sure someone told me that there is OT7 versions of all these songs, live live performances. So that means I probably have one of these with Hot Dog, which is gonna be even better. But just like the whole group singing a jazz song that's just like really soft jazz playing in the background. Like I could just have this on when I'm relaxing or doing little chores or whatever to just mellow myself out. Love how light their voices all were throughout this. Love all the vocal melodies where they were just doing little moments of flipping up into more of the falsetto sound and picking moments when they were taking away some of that breathiness, letting certain notes fall off, or the ad-libs were really good too, all these little vocal runs. There was also what I think it was Yuhyun that was doing it in the background, where there was a nice slide where she put a little bit more into her voice, a little more closure, a little more power behind it before softening out to do some more vocal run style things. Love the staccato notes that they were doing with those oohs at the end of the song as well. Just so many things. I love the percussion, I love the bass, I love the guitar rhythms that were going throughout it. The keys were fun. I'm just so content right now. We have to move on to another song, and I feel like I needed that, honestly. It was everything that I wanted, but in a very grounding kind of way. And I think after how I went through the first part of this album, that I really needed this moment of just grounding and coming back to myself, because Lord knows that they have put me through a whole roller coaster with this album so far, and it's nice to know that there's this landing spot in the middle so that I can collect myself before we get to the rest of the stuff. But we gotta move on to the next song. All right, we got a special clip for this one, and it has captions on it. All good things. I don't know what's gonna happen in this. Honestly, the outfits already are making me a little bit nervous. Last time we had a special clip, it sent me into another dimension. I'm not really sure what's gonna happen in this. I'm hoping, since it's a self-made MV, that maybe we're having some fun with it. Not sure, but I'm feeling pretty mellowed out now, so we'll see how long that lasts. Already being dramatic. The outfits though. Yuhyun was laughing and then she's like, no wait, game face? Okay, I feel like we're gonna have some fun with it. I'm gonna try and pay attention to song as well. For real though, I want these outfits. Gahyun's not breaking though.
끝없이 펼쳐진 red sand 이내 한없이 차가운 dead end 쉴 틈 없이 멀어지고 있는 my way.
Okay, love that they're having fun with it. Love the little vocal run that Xian had at the end there. Interesting that we're having red again, right? Because we already had red sun, now we have red sand. Red ribbon also makes me think of the red string of fate that we've had them mentioned at other points in their music. So maybe carrying some of that, especially since we have Sahara, which is a desert. We've already had some desert imagery. I know that we're not doing nightmare story stuff technically anymore, but it does make me think of the desert where Yuhyun was when she was like further into the nightmare. But we also had some of it in Scream, right? When they were in the ruins, there was the toppled over pillars and they were all in circles. Maybe. I am trying to pay attention to a lot of things though, so if I miss stuff, it's just gonna happen.
그런 전부를 담은 현실 찾을 수 없어 oasis 한 줄기 oasis 아무도
I do like the Oasis, the water fan. But I do think it's interesting to have this idea of just focus on the song and not get too caught up in the fact that they're just being their ridiculous selves. But again, this really subdued but clearly rock-inspired sound. It does make me think of almost like a counter to Scream in a lot of ways. Like this idea that it's more subdued. There's this feeling of being lost, of not having a clear path. We also had Black or White, which was talking about not taking a prescribed path and instead finding your own way. But this feels a little bit more like you're realizing that it's going to be a little bit more difficult than you previously anticipated. Lower in their range as well, more subdued in terms of the vocals, but contrasting that to Jazz Bar, which was very breathy, to have this instead be a lot more closure and a little bit more of a forward placement with like their vowels and whatnot. It's a lot from, it's like a little bit of a whiplash to be like listening to the song and being like, okay, this is a serious topic and getting into it, but then also being ridiculous. 그런 전부를 담은 현실 찾을 수 없어 oasis 한 줄기 oasis 아무도 정해진 길은 없어 내 앞을 막아서도 Love that melody. 진리를 붙잡고 맞서 싸워 앞으로 나가야 해 다리 봐 다리 차올라 Ooh, okay. Yeah. She's not even in focus yet. This blue hair, though, is no joke. Love this idea of like fate. Again, like I was talking before about the red ribbon or the red string of fate. And then we had the line of everyone has a fixed path. So this idea that there is like a fate meant for people and like feeling lost in this moment, but knowing that there must be some path that you are meant to be on, or even knowing that the path that you're on is the one that you're supposed to be on. But at the same time, there are a lot of challenges that come with that. And you can feel as if you're wandering in a desert, looking for that oasis, looking for that moment when it stops being as much of a struggle, even though deep down that this is where you're supposed to be. It's just, it can be difficult sometimes to understand that the struggle that you find yourself in is where you're supposed to be, because it is a struggle. It is something that you are challenged with, and it can be difficult. And wanting there to be this oasis, this safe haven, this finding the thing that you are longing for, that would make things significantly easier. But sometimes you just need to go through the process of wandering on that path by yourself.
진리를 붙잡고 맞서 싸워 앞으로 나가야 해 사리와 달이 차올라
Ooh. Oh, Xian. Okay, I'm gonna just love the way that all the music came in. Love this staccato rah being like repeated. The moon fills up is interesting too, because in Red Sun, obviously it was talking about letting the moon rest and then more of commanding the sun and the power to that. Whereas this feels like a switching of that, switching into times, or I don't know if I can put it fully into words, but I don't, maybe even going back to your roots, this feeling of, again, knowing that you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be, even if it's difficult or it's a struggle, and relying on, even though you're doing something new and you find yourself in a new environment, you're still able to pull on past experiences and know that you've struggled in the past, therefore you can struggle now and still make it to the other side. Maybe. I know also, don't they have, is it Full Moon on this album? They put it on this album as well, so could also be pulling some of that moon imagery. That's something that's going to be later in the album. All of them whipping their heads around, getting the staff involved. Them being ridiculous though. But the start a fire is interesting too, because we had the water imagery before of the oasis. Is usually in a desert, oasis is a body of water within all of that desert, having that contrast again. But then also it feels like a flip, because they were talking about change everything quickly. It does feel like that flip of sun to moon, night to day, especially in the desert where the daytime it's super hot, but in the nighttime it's super cold. So that like that flipping that happens in the desert, really interesting to draw from that imagery. There's something else that I want to talk about, but I get very distracted by them just being adorable.
Understand. 흐름을 거슬러 맞서 싸워 앞질러 나가야 해 사려와 달이 차올라
The like phases of the moon. Okay. Oh, so it was like, she's such a cutie. Anyway, nobody has a fixed path. So it's like you get to choose your own path. You get to choose the challenges that you have to deal with. Oh, the one line that I was thinking before is draw as I will. We've had a few different times where they've talked about drawing. Which was it, Kitty? The MV where Dami was like painting There's been a few times where they've talked about painting, drawing, this way of physically bringing into reality the things going on in your head. That's what I always think of when they bring up drawing and painting, is that it's like taking an image that only exists in your imagination and making that external and having it be something that other people can experience and take meaning from and get an emotional reaction to, which is what all art is. It's like taking something internal and making an external form of it that helps people understand or be emotionally impacted by that expression. Oh, the started war, also interesting, like this idea of fighting through, like they talk about fighting and like outrunning something, and even if you get pushed down, that you're still going to continue on, like this idea that when you're faced with those oppositions or those blocks, you're going to continue to carry on through it. And they had some talk before about breaking through barriers or breaking through walls. I think specifically they talked about like breaking walls or break the wall, because I know they have a song about that. And I was like, oh yeah, they're talking about like when you face those barriers, when these things get in your way, when you find opposition, that just means that you are having to fight through it. And them saying nobody has a set path, is even though some things happen because of fate, you can't rely on fate. At a certain point, you have to be the one to make active decisions in your life. And if you really want something, then sometimes you're gonna have to fight for it. Sometimes you're going to have to wander through a desert, and sometimes you're going to have to fight against what other people are telling you to do. And they had the wind, which I think of the wind with sand picking up and battering you. They also had going against the current, which is more water imagery, that even if you were to find yourself in an ocean as opposed to a desert, there would still be currents, there would still be tides, there would still be this flow that you have to go against and fight against if you want to forge your own path and decide your own fate. They're so ridiculous. I like that they're just having so much fun with it, and it's like just in like green rooms around doing performances and promotional stuff. I love the jump cuts too. Like fans and making their hair blow dramatically as well. Love Jua's energy here of just like whipping herself back and forth here. I love that in the chorus it does have this like subdued, controlled feeling to it as well, that it does feel more grounded in the vocals. Like it doesn't have this huge buildup of energy that they have in some of their other songs that get a little bit more rock in the chorus, that it feels more grounded. It feels more like trudging through, especially like the repetition of Sahara, like the way that they're repeating that part, it feels like you're just trudging through and continuing to move forward, and it's going to be slow going, but worth it in the end, because you know that you're supposed to be going in this path and in this direction, and you just need to keep going through it because the other side is going to be worth all of that struggle that you went through before. Love the drums too. Love her voice there.
I can get through everything. Sahara.
Okay, no, drums there. The drinking water. Gio, I don't know why she needs to be laying down on the ground or wherever she was. Not needed. Not needed, ma'am. Not without a warning. Love the note there. Finally getting into some of those more rock vocals. I'm trying to pay attention to a little bit more of the instrumentation that's happening here, because I was like, I'm just trying to focus on lyrics and vocals and I'm getting distracted. Love Gahyun's vocal there, softening up really nicely at her part. Poor thing is fighting having this fan directly in her eyes. But I think that fits very much with what they're talking about. And before I was talking about how the wind blowing with picking up that sand and kind of pelting you with it, that not only are you fighting against the wind if you're like walking into it, but you also are like getting bombarded by all of these little pieces of sand, right? And it is going to leave scratches. It is going to leave burns. Even though you're like, oh, tiny pieces of sand are like inconsequential, when they're being whipped at you at high winds, it isn't so much anymore. So it's symbolic of how tiny struggles or tiny inconveniences can add up, right? Yeah, maybe one person saying something negative about one of their songs is just whatever you you can move on. But if you have 1,000 of those, 10,000 of those, 100,000 of those, they start to add up. And at a certain point, it starts to be this huge wave of negativity and people telling you that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, or that you don't have what it takes, or don't have the talent, or you aren't saying anything consequential or something, whatever it may be that someone is deciding to pick out and nitpick them about. That adds up after a while. And I think that people who leave comments like that don't fully understand that, one, people are going to see them, and two, it's not just their comment. Right? They think, oh, it's just one negative comment. Why are you having such a emotional or negative reaction to it? It's not just one comment. You're like the 100,000th comment that has said something like that. And at that point, yeah, you get worn down. At a certain point, you have a very sudden emotional reaction to it because you are always having to deal with it. So it's just an interesting metaphor to instead be like these obstacles of a wall or these like huge structures that you have to somehow get over. It is really the tiny things, the tiny obstacles, the tiny opposition that add up and really become irritating in a way that I feel like the big obstacles, not so much. Like the big obstacles can be daunting, but at least you can see them coming and you can make plans for them. Whereas it's the tiny ones that sneak up on you and that you don't fully understand that they've been building up the way that they have until you realize how scratched up and beat up you are from them. She like supposed to be lifting the bench with her finger.
I can get through everything.
Beautiful note. Ugh, the drums. Ooh, Jesus. Okay, before we get into the behind the scenes, love that like those drums coming in again, feeling like a marching or an army coming together, especially since they said started war was one of the lyrics, feeling like this rallying cry of we're all going to march together. And it's almost again like a flipping of what I was talking about before of having these little oppositions of all of these people who can gang up on you, or little inconveniences that could add up to a more difficult obstacle that you have to face. It's the same in the opposite though. For every negative comment that might add up or build up about them, there's also a bunch of positive comments and their fans telling them how much they both love their music, love their art, love them as people, the way that their music has brought them comfort or solace or gotten them through difficult times or just brightens up their day. All of those comments also build up, and at a certain point you have this whole army or choir behind you of people who are telling you how wonderful the things are that you are creating and how much they mean to them. And it's important to let those build up in you as well, and to ensure that those things are things that you can remember and pull from, and understand that those are little building blocks that build up your own fortress of who you are as a creator and an artist. And yes, they may get bombarded by winds and storms and sands, but if you continue to build it up, then you're going to be able to outrun the negativity and the ambition to rip everything down. And I can't wait to see some behind the scenes, because I'm sure there was lots of stuff that they filmed where they were like, we can't fit that into a single special clip. I was gonna say I feel bad for people on the bottom of the pyramid. It looked like she was struggling. I was gonna say there are probably people around. Like there was one clip where Sue was on the stairs and I'm like, there are just like people like walking around as well. That would be so awkward to just be like, hi, we're just being weird in the green room. Nothing to see here, just filming. Don't worry about it. Oh, be careful. Shim is just like on her phone. My face hurts from laughing, which I was not expecting. Focusing on the song, obviously they're adorable and chaotic, and so there's probably so many things that I missed in this because I was trying to do song stuff at the same time as watching them be chaotic. But I really like the flipping that I feel like is happening with this song, especially since we had Red Sun, which has a bunch of imagery, but people also talked about how it has to do with hypnosis and how it is manipulation and control of people, which is part of the reason they have the performance that they do to it. And then having this song that feels almost like a counter to that of finding your own path and struggling through and not letting outside forces dictate what you should be doing or how you should be going on your own path, and that no one gets to pick that path for you. And we had Black or White that was about picking an alternate path to what was offered to you. So this feels like a continuation of that as well, especially I'm thinking of narratively with Jazz Bar as well, which is talking about finding someone in an audience and hoping that they would come and talk to you or make the first move. But it also feels like a kind of a turning point in terms of the narrative of the album, if I will, because it does feel like they are like the performers in that narrative. They are on a stage, they're performing, and they notice something that makes them aware of it. Almost feels like they're going through the motions of being a performer and then seeing that person or whatever that kind of pivotal moment may be. I know within the narrative of the song it's a person, but it could also be symbolic of lots of other points of just like a turning point where they become more self-aware of what they're doing and what is happening in the situation, and it makes them realize that maybe they want someone to break that monotony or break that mundane routine that they have found themselves stuck in without them really knowing what happened. And that may be part of with Red Sun of being manipulated or hypnotized into doing something that maybe you don't want to, or lured into a trap that maybe you didn't know that you were in until it was too late. And then having this song be breaking out of that and deciding that struggling may be difficult, obviously, but the payoff will be worth it, because if you can fight through to the other side, if you can get past these obstacles, then you're going to find that oasis or that place that you actually wanted to be, as opposed to living in the mirage of something that may feel like you are finding what you really want, but it isn't tangible, right? Maybe? I don't know. This does make me realize why I separate out listening to songs and getting visuals, because it is very distracting to me, especially with their chaotic energy. So I feel like I'm going to have to come back and rewatch this so that I can pick up on a lot of things, because I was trying to do too much at once and it overwhelmed my brain a little bit. All right, so in this we have In the Frozen, which I think is an interesting shift again, because we just had Sahara, which is a desert, which is usually associated with heat, and then to have Frozen instead. But I also mentioned that one thing about deserts is that they're really hot during the daytime, but they get really cold at night. And we've had lots of imagery throughout Dreamcatcher's career of them talking about nighttime and darkness and embracing that specific time as opposed to being in the sunlight. Interested to see where we're going with this song. I don't know. We've done so many things in this album so far that I have no idea. Ooh. Interesting mixing with those synths.
얼어붙은 땅 그 계절의 모든 게 잠든 이 밤 It's too cold It's too cold 아무도 찾지 못하는 벼랑 끝 작은 온기도 없는 이곳 스스로 눈을 떠
Ooh, okay. I love the kind of like dark feeling of the production here. I also had mentions of nighttime with Yuhyun's lyrics and then saying it's too cold. So I might be onto something with the imagery of a desert landscape, but at nighttime where there's dark in contrast. I like a cliffside, the image there. I think of maybe hanging from there and nobody can find. It's again the isolation that they were talking about in Sahara, but this time in almost a moment of peril. You've found yourself on a cliffside, and you know that no one is going to be able to find you because you've taken this path that no one else has taken, and now you feel like you have to go it alone. Interesting. Love the vocals, which is like a given, but just the way that they're getting into almost like a falsetto placement with them, they sound gorgeous.
시작해 move 그래 그렇게 move 힘없이 흔들려도 기적처럼 빈틈없게 덮인 이 추위 속에서 피어나는 flower.
Ooh, okay, no, I know we're about to drop, I know we are, but I love the way that they're like lightening up their voices, but they're getting, again, they're shifting into this falsetto place, but then they're almost switching into the head voice, which is just giving them a little bit more closure. I love the talking about like, opening eyes, opening up other people's eyes. Again, feels like waking from a dream perhaps, or finding yourself back in the dream. We had, this was like a place without a trace of warmth, but then we also had Gahyeon, who was talking about embrace me and give me warmth that way, wanting someone to find you and offer that place of comfort and warmth, which is interesting as well. We have a great buildup happening at this point too. They talked about moving too, so I was thinking hanging off of a cliff face or hanging off of a cliff. It's really hard to recover from that, and you're just suspended in this place of being on the edge and wavering between safety and danger, and you're not quite sure where you're going to end up. And them talking about moving and finding a way to get out of that position. They're also talking about in Sahara of just continue to move, just outpace these things that are going to cause negativity or cause you to doubt your own strength or your own conviction. I love this build up with the percussion though. Ooh. Ooh. I didn't mean to mimic what was gonna be sung. No, Dami, wait your turn. Love the percussion. Love that we're getting some more EDM inspired stuff. I always love when they do that to me. It always blindsides me a little bit because I don't know what it is. I don't expect that kind of a club sound from Dreamcatcher, but in a way it makes a lot of sense to have that really heavy production and samples being put into it. They've always had these wonderful moments where they use certain sampling in their production that just adds an extra layer to it. I think the first time I really heard it was in Some Love, which obviously I'm skipping ahead in their discography, but I remember I love Some Love so much. My favorite song by them, and I listen to it all the time because it has those interesting samples in it. But we even had it in Scream, where they literally had the sample of a scream being part of the drop, right? Those interesting pieces that they're bringing into the production. And here, just really dark sounding and definitely has an EDM club feeling to it, but it has that really dark, sinister undertone to it. I also love this idea of the flower. Again, we had the Sahara, so we were like in this desert place, and then having that flower, that plant life that is existing despite the conditions, despite the desolation of where they are, despite this cold, unfriendly environment, having that kind of a single flower persevering and blooming and continuing to be this beam of life and beauty within that environment. Love how minimal the chorus is too. I feel like if there's a live, I think there's at least one where they're singing, but if there's a live that includes choreo, there's probably some cool choreo going on. That like mixing with the drum where it like travels in the mixing. Ooh.
시작해 move 그래 그렇게 move 힘없이 흔들려도 견뎌야 해 빈틈없게 덮인 이 추위 속에서 피어나는 fire.
Oof. Oh, even like the way that they like soften out when they say flower, like having these really strong vocals and then softening out on that part really shows like the contrast, this delicate yet preserving life within this desolate, empty place. I also love this. There was the line of save yourself. Love that. Even though you hurt me, save myself. That idea of even though they have faced opposition or obstacles or hardships, they're going to continue to persevere. And they talked about that in Sahara of like, continuing to battle through and continuing to forge their own path. And then, you know, saving yourselves. We had some of it, I was talking about with Jazz Bar, where it feels a little bit like they want this person to intervene and to break up the monotony and to make the first move. And this feels more of, I'm going to do it myself. Right? I know that I'm capable. I know that I've struggled before, and that means that I can struggle again and get to the other side. I've done that before. I know I can do that. I know I have that strength. I know I'm stronger now because I've already done it. And I also begin blooming next to you. This idea of, instead of wanting someone to rescue you or holding someone like on a pedestal, instead seeing them as equals, being side by side instead, and not pushing that person to be in a position above you. I love the production. I'm just like getting distracted by it because I'm like, there's so many little things of like, drum fills and synths that are happening in it that I just love. And it all has this very dark undertone to it.
어느샌가 눈을 뜨고 시작해 move 그래 그렇게 move 힘없이 흔들려도 견뎌야 해.
These almost feel like marching band drums too.
이 추위 속에서 피어나는 flower 한 송이 flower
Oof. I also love the single flower, not just in being this one point of preserving life within this desert or desolation, but also a single flower. I can persevere on my own. I can save myself. I can continue to grow and bloom all on my own. I don't need other people to validate what I'm doing or the things that I'm striving after, or even just me being myself. I don't need that external validation of like, being like a garden of flowers, being surrounded by similar people. I don't need that to understand my worth or the strength that I have. And I think also of a single flower being in a place where there aren't other people around without observation, being able to exist and bloom and grow without needing the validation of someone seeing it and, I don't know, passing judgment on it or approving of it. I think a lot of the time we think of flowers as being just for beauty, just as something that is pretty to look at, and without being observed as being like beautiful or delicate. Does it have the same value to us, right? Does a flower lose its value if it's not deemed beautiful by us? And I like the idea of having this flower in isolation by itself, knowing that it is still a strong living thing that is capable of preserving itself and should be struggling and growing despite the conditions, even with no one there to validate that existence, maybe.
한 송이 flower 잠들지 마 다시 필 수 없으니 한순간
Gorgeous piano.
놓칠 수 없는 걸 알잖아 길고 길었던 시간들이 이젠 goodbye 빛나는 시작을 기다려 In the frozen
Ooh. I love the limit no more. Is the percussion here? Ooh. Love getting Dio with a little bit of a darker tone to her voice there right at the end. Love the buildup. I was also thinking, because they talked about in the lyrics about moving and not being stuck, I also think Frozen. A lot of time you think of Frozen being like when you freeze up, you're not moving, you're incapable of moving. And then contrasting that with them talking about moving and saving themselves and continuing forward. There's a ton of momentum to the song within the production, and them having that repeated limit no more, that continued line being over and over again, also also love in the Frozen almost embracing being in this place that is frigid and cold and adapting to it or claiming it as a place where you can thrive, especially if there isn't anyone else around. I think a lot of the time people see a place, if it's metaphorical here as well. I think sometimes people see a pocket in an industry, whether that's music or otherwise, that no one has explored, and they think that must be for a reason. That must be because there's nothing there. But also, if you're the only one there, there's not a lot of competition, right? If you can embrace and adapt and claim that place where no one else has ventured as your own, then no one's there to challenge you. And eventually other people are going to show up and try to do it, but you'll always be the first one that tried it. It almost feels like them saying in the Frozen at the end is claiming that place. And they had a lot of that in their earlier music where they were talking about nightmares and darkness and dreams, where they're like, I claim the darkness. I claim being in this place that is usually scares other people, usually is uncomfortable for other people or unexplored. I claim that and take strength in the discomfort that is there, because that means that there's also something important to discover, something worth putting time and effort into. And it feels like a similar thing here of them saying, I claim that cold place, that desolation, that the struggle involved with being in this place that most people can't endure because it's too much of a struggle for them, but it's not too much for me. Them saying limit no more and don't want to give it up. I don't want to take the easy path, even though I know that it would be easier. Even though I know that if I just went with what was easiest, I know that my life would have less struggles in it. But is it more worth living with less struggle in it? Or is it worth more to have struggled and actually gain something that has a deeper importance to you? Or even just to prove something to yourself, to grow and become stronger and understand that without the struggle, there is stagnation. You will stay put if you don't struggle, and you won't be able to get to to that better version of yourself if you're content with just staying with who you are. Maybe? I don't know. Love the production though. Super fun. Love the club EDM feels. Always love when they pull those out because it always throws me off, but I'm starting to see that as something that they really like to incorporate in their music. This is our last song for this reaction because I've heard the other ones that are on here besides the outro. I don't know where we're gonna go because the end of their albums can go either way. Sometimes they're intense, sometimes they continue stories, sometimes they deviate from it, and at least in my opinion, and the narratives that I make up about what their albums mean. Sometimes they deviate from it, break character a little bit, and make songs that are specifically for their fans, from them to their fans. I don't know where we're gonna get it. With Daybreak, we had another song that had day in it. Daydream from previous albums. So we'll see what they got for us. The pictures make me feel like this might be something lighter, unless they just decided to use these pictures for this video. Ooh, okay. Oh, that flip up. Ooh, okay. Love this lo-fi feel that they have in this one. Really softening out their vocals here. Love the vocal melodies that they're putting into it. They're like flipping up at certain points. I think it's interesting that we have here of someone being in an embrace, because in previous song, in the Frozen, they were talking about wanting to be embraced, to have that warmth. And now we have this song where they're sleeping in an embrace or waking up in an embrace. Interesting too, to say like, how could I be asleep, when we've had lots of imagery with them of them wanting to be in dreams, wanting to be asleep, because that's part of the nightmare story, but also a whole part of their aesthetic or the stories that they're telling is embracing those dreams and the darkness and stuff, and then having this be like, how could I be asleep in this context? So we've had lots of them talking about wanting to open up their eyes and break out of the dream, or feeling stuck or escaping from what is challenging them, and instead to wake up, open their eyes, move, face those challenges head on. I like the "you are the largest star I have." Love that image. They've had lots of star imagery that I always associate with them and with their fans, but also largest star that we have is the sun. We've had sun mentioned before in contrast to the moon. Love that. Just the imagery of sun and moon and these two very prominent celestial bodies within just like the stars. There was another one that I want to talk about, but don't know if I can remember. I love all the synths happening as well.
내가 가진 가장 큰 별 속은 나의 찬란한 빛 그리고 나 깊은 새벽이 날 찾아오게 되면 셀 수 없는 생각 속에 잠겨서
Love the elongation of that phrase.
하염없이 연길래 새벽에 너에게 나보다 더 뜨겁게
Oh, okay. Love all the bass and percussion in this. Love that it's very dreamy in terms of their vocal delivery. Nice soft vocals coming through here again. I was also thinking with Daybreak is the point where the night ends. So we've just had moments of them talking about embracing the cold and dark of nighttime. Very interesting throughout this whole album. There does seem to be this constant push and pull of light and dark, day and night, them constantly struggling back and forth of difference in identity. And some of that I feel like is expectation versus reality, who they feel like they need to be versus who they actually are, wanting to embrace, like I was saying, those spaces of unexplored struggle or darkness that make other people uncomfortable or scare them, and leading into the horror elements and more macabre, uncanny feeling of some of the stuff that they put into their music and the visuals associated there, but also wanting to be in warmth and light and not be in isolation. There is this constant push and pull of feeling both isolated in a sense that makes you long for someone else to be there and for someone else to comfort you, but then also victory in isolation of being strong enough and resilient enough to exist in those isolated places on your own and still find strength in them, but also longing to be with other people and longing to be in places highly populated. There's this constant like switching around and struggle and like contradictions within themselves. I'm also thinking, because Handang isn't here, how much of that is overlapping with knowing that there's a piece of the group missing and trying to incorporate that into some of the messaging and music of it, of wanting to be with someone who isn't there anymore or feeling isolated. Also remembering that at the time of this album coming out, we were all isolated, struggling with having that imposed on you and having a distance between you and the people that you care about, whether that is having people who are in other places, like Handang being in a different country and not being able to be with the group, or just even at the time you had a window or a door between you and the people that you cared about, and you just had to maintain that barrier between you and those people. Even though you were so close, there was still this clear divide between you, and it was having to maintain that barrier because you care about that person, having to isolate yourself out of a place of love, even though it contradicts what you want. What you want is to embrace the people that you love, to be close to the people that you love, to be able to reach out and have that contact with them. But it was out of love that we were isolating and keeping our distance and not coming in contact with those people. So the time that this album came out is a contradiction in and of itself. I have to remind myself of the context of this album and the things that not only the members were going through, but everyone was going through at the time, and the uncertainty there. So there is this turmoil to the whole album, and I don't know, just the contrast between those things. And I think that having them wanting daybreak, those moments of like when the dream ends and they can have that quiet moment with this person or whatever the person is symbolizing within the song, wanting that liminal time between being asleep and then having to actually get up and carry on with your day, to be in that kind of like cozy place in between sleep and waking life, simultaneously having the sleepless nights, not being able to, I don't know, fully embrace either existence of being asleep or being awake. And it's only in that weird in-between place where you're like not quite awake, but not quite asleep, that feels comfortable to them anymore. I don't know, maybe I'm rambling at this point. We've gone through a lot with this album, so I don't know how much my brain is working at this point, but I love the dreamy vibe. Love the vibrato in her voice there. Ooh, the way they dragged out that note. I'm sorry. Look, that whole part, I love the illuminated through like the crack in the curtains. I just love that image of the sun breaking through, but you still have the curtains drawn. You're still trying to stave off the day and again have this moment of between being awake and being asleep. Love how we have the cold air. Again, we're talking about cold like we did in the Frozen, but saying it feels beautiful in the light of you. It feels better having that person with you. It's easier to face things like cold or struggles or whatever that may be. Love the vocal route that we got there. And we have a common dream is really great too. That shared dream, we could think of that dream of having a dream for living your life, but then also a shared dream of actually in sleep when you're dreaming, the double meaning there. And even if it's imaginary, even if it's just something that we are thinking, bringing up in our heads, it's almost like one, I think of, oh, we can dream together, having a dream, having a goal that you want to get to. That in of itself is imaginary, but it helps to be able to visualize that, really come up with a plan of like, how can we get to this place so it's not imaginary anymore? But I can also think of it as being imaginary in that they're thinking about how they want to be in this place. Again, if we are thinking of them being in a place of isolation and not being able to actually embrace this person that they care about, it could be like, even if it's just imaginary for me to picture having that moment with you, having that quiet moment of being in your embrace, or just getting to be together in that kind of daybreak, that sunrise moment before I actually have to get up and go about my life, to just have that quiet moment with you. Even if it's imaginary, just thinking about it has a certain comfort to it. Beautiful.
괜찮은 척하지만 너도 나와 같겠지만
Oof, beautiful song.
끝엔 서로가 함께 있으니까 똑같은 하루밤.
Ooh, okay, no, Gahyun, don't even dabble in maybe having a rap cadence. Don't do that to me. Love the buildup of Jio's vocals there, like gorgeous the way that she just got like tons of more closure to that, almost getting into the belt there. Love that like at the end of the day we are together, like whether that is like this image that they have of embracing, I think of being in a bed, obviously dreaming, and then getting into the daybreak where you get to have that moment of quiet before everything else happens. But it could also be dreams, right? Like it could also be like, I only get to be with you in my imagination, in my dreams, in this fantasy of what I can imagine in my head, because it isn't a possible reality right now. Gahyun, don't comfort my soul. Thank you.
서로가 함께 있으니까 똑같은 하루밤 어때도 괜찮아 뒤바뀌어버린 낮과 밤도 너를 기다리다 가득 채워진 맘 그만큼 지금 좋아한다 습관처럼 내 꼭 끌어안고서 놓지 말아줘도 꿈속으로 데려가
Oof. Okay. Few things. We have like, the same day repeats. That definitely makes me think of lockdowns and stuff where everyone was just repeating the same things over and over again because we weren't really sure what was going to happen, or what was going on, or when things were going to change. Even the reversed day and night. Interesting. I've been talking about this whole album about like how it feels like we're having this reversal, right? At least for the second half, where it feels like we're having lots of moments of flipping between night and day, sun, moon, lots of turmoil between dark and light and wake and sleep and control and empowerment and isolation and manipulation. There's so much back and forth between this album. And then hug me tight like it's a habit. That's just like a really cute line. And love the cadence of it. It's almost like a rap cadence because it has this, I don't know, almost like meandering, almost like ticking of a clock metronome feeling that I think fits with this idea of repeating the same things or going through the same motions. And then they'll take me into a dream, like the idea of take me with you into this imaginary place or this fantasy where things get to be better, or we get to be together, or I don't have the same isolation. Beautiful ad-libs. I do like how there's this non-conclusion to it. This idea of it's saying more passionately, I feel more of what I'm feeling towards you, or I feel more capable of expressing how I feel about you at daybreak than just like going about my day, right? And like how just going through the day has its own struggles, but then at night, in dream, at daybreak, it's almost like I feel like daybreak as like the dream is where everything's happening, where they can visualize things, they can fantasize, they can be with this person, they can do the things that they want to do. And then daybreak, there is that moment of before the realization of reality sets in, right? Where you wake up and you feel like there's this strange meshing of dream and reality where it hasn't quite sunk in yet that it was a dream, or that at least during like lockdowns and everything, where you would forget that there was all this crazy stuff going on in the world, and you would be able to still like think, oh, I get to live the life that I got used to living, the normal life that I used to have. I get to do that during the day, where you can't forget that anything is going on. You have to be aware of it. And I think that the song could also be towards fans too, of like wanting to be with fans, wanting to be with the people that support them, or even just like family, right? I put it Handong specifically, but it was probably also being with the other members, being with their family, being with their friends, being with their fans, being with other employees that they work with, whether that's production or choreography or filming or whatever it might be, that they don't get to be with those people that they had grown so close to or that they care so much about. And the only time that they really got to be with them, or they got to have the life that they used to have, or that they envisioned that they were going to be having at that moment, is in their dreams. And there's always that point at daybreak of like when you just wake up where it hasn't quite sunk in that they're not going to be able to do the things that they were planning on doing. It's an interesting shift of, I don't know, if you think of this in comparison to like Scream, where we started off, right? Of like it feeling like this demanding of attention and strength and perseverance, like this huge battle cry of I can do anything that I want to do, and I'm going to do it. And even if I have to scream, even if I have to struggle, even if I have to fight my way through, I'm going to do it. To this, where if you think about it in the context of what's happening in the world, of like how do you fight something like a disease, like an illness? How do you fight something like that? You can't just race through it. You can't just persevere through. There's a difference in dealing with opposition in terms of career or people blocking your way than dealing with illness or disease or global things going on in the world, that you can't just be like strong in the sense of physical strength. It's about waiting it out was the best thing that you could do, right? Waiting it out, staying put, not doing the things that you were going to do. It feels counterproductive, yet it was the only thing that we could do to really deal with it. And having that be where they are at the end of the album of the dreams need to be enough, the fantasies need to be enough, with the hope of the promise that there will be a moment after, and it's not forever. There's a temporary respite to it. Maybe there's a lot of turmoil in this album, trying to link it all together into a story. There's so much stuff going on, but we have an outro still. End of the album. I don't know what this is gonna make me feel. I'm assuming it's gonna be instrumental. It's been a ride, to say the least. Ooh. Almost like cicadas. Nighttime maybe again? Dusk? Interesting with the synth there. Didn't we have a wind up synth? So it like rose in its intensity in the intro, and now we have it like descending in this one. Of the piano keys. That's a ascending. Interesting. To have kind of this, I don't know, it feels like more subdued, more controlled, more like there's like a cap on the production, if that makes sense. Like it's within a certain like octave, but it's very much more like bass and percussion with like a beat pad and stuff, with like a couple of synths that are doing that descending but also ascending, which is interesting to have that parallel of maybe there is going to be a rise again. It just at the moment or at a little bit more of a lower point. The piano keys really nice coming there, but the one piano a little more isolated than a lot of the production in the intro, but it seems more like a subdued way of ending off the album. There is a certain ominous feeling to some of the synths that are chosen in it, and having the ones, it almost sounds like cicadas. So it's sitting in that dusk or nighttime place, or even dawn if you're going with Daybreak being the song before this, but like sitting in this liminal space of the world not quite being awake but not quite being asleep, and there's a certain like quiet to the world and to nature where you can hear things like cicadas and insects, and it feels a little bit more introspective, maybe. I don't know guys, I get to the end of this album and I got a lot of feelings and thoughts swirling all together. Yeah, there's a lot happening in this album, and I feel like I'm not going to be able to fully grasp all of my thoughts or feelings about it right off the bat in a first reaction sense, but there does seem to feel like a lot of turmoil, and I feel like for a lot of this album it wasn't quite singing in to me the time period, like the context of when this album was created or what they might have been going through whilst creating it. And I definitely could feel that a little bit more in the second half of the album, and I don't really know the behind the scenes nitty gritty of it, so if anyone else knows, feel free to put in the comments all the info. But it feels a little bit like the first half of the album was written pre-lockdown and the second part of the album was written after. There's definitely more feelings of isolation in the second part of the album, whereas I felt like the first part of the album felt a little bit more like playing with identity, like I was talking about in my first reaction, where it felt like them exploring different facets of themselves, at least in terms of being a performer or being Dreamcatcher or being someone who is in the public eye. And then the second part of the album felt more about introspection, like exploring themselves and their identity in relation to themselves and exploring different facets of what was going on with them and dealing with feelings of isolation, but also struggles, but also acknowledging that there are other people around who are going to help, and understanding that fate isn't something that you can always rely on. Sometimes you have to rely on your own willpower and your own strength and pick your own path and forge forward, and you're going to sometimes stumble across obstacles and cliffs and things that are going to change the plan, change the path, change the direction that you're going into. And sometimes you'll have people there who are able to support you and help you and like lend you a helping hand, and other times you need to save yourself. And I don't know, there's lots of playing around with different kinds of images that it's almost like they set up a meaning for certain images or symbols and then immediately start to counter that. They're like picking certain things like sun or moon or dreams or flowers or whatever. They're picking those specific symbols and then analyzing them from lots of different directions of how can we talk about this specific image or concept associated with this symbolism. That's fascinating to me. And I said that by the end of the album, I was hoping that I would know a little bit more about what tree of language meant, like why the tree of language. And maybe that's part of it, is I think the tree of language of being, I don't know, like how language is interconnected or what things transcend languages or the patterns in language. Maybe that's just my linguist brain, but there are lots of different language families and lots of languages kind of branch off from the same root languages, and there are lots of interconnection between those languages. And even if you're talking to someone who doesn't necessarily speak the same language as you, there are certain ways of being able to communicate with them that you can get your point across. There are lots of ways of transcending language to be able to express ideas and thoughts and emotions. And music is one of the great ways to do that, is that you don't have to know the language. I'm sitting here watching lyric videos with translations to get the basics of what the song is. I understand that it's not going to be an exact translation. It's not going to be the same as it being in a language that I speak, but it's a way of bridging that gap a little bit. But I also just love the music for the sake of it. I don't need to know every single word that they're singing to understand the emotions that are being put into it, whether that's through the production or through the way that they are singing, the way that you're using their voices. Music is a great way of kind of transcending language and communicating beyond that. So I wonder if that's maybe part of it, is the interconnections of language and communication, but also the universals of certain emotions. Definitely in the last 4 years, we've all understood what it felt like to be isolated. Like the world understands the feeling of what it's like to not only be isolated, but also to have significant change in plans. I think that we all understand what it's like to have to cancel things that meant a great deal to us, or to have to drastically change the path that we were on. I know for me, I had a plan. I had an idea of what 2020 was going to be and beyond, and what my life was going to look like. And that is not what my life is now. And that's not what the plan ended up being, because that's not how it went. I was basing that plan off of what the world was like pre-2020, and that's not what I got, right? So I think that we all know what it's like to finally find yourself feeling like you're in this desert, this desolate land of what do I do? Where am I? How do I get to where I want to be? What are all of these obstacles and struggles that I suddenly have to deal with that no one could prepare me for, and everyone else is also dealing with them, so there's no one there who can support and help me and rescue me from it because they're all struggling with the same thing. We're all in this same position. So there's like all of these universal things that we now understand, and you don't have to speak Korean to know what isolation is, or to know what struggling with different obstacles is, or self-doubt, or getting hurt by people. We all can understand that regardless of what language that we speak. Maybe that's part of where the tree of language comes from. Maybe, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I would love to have a full discussion about some of the context around this album. Let me know if there are places where they've talked about it. I'm sure that there is, whether that's live streams or other promotional stuff. Give me your thoughts on the album as well. I definitely felt like the first album threw me for a huge loop, and the second album made me a little bit more introspective and focus a little bit more on more complex ideas. I'm excited to listen to this album a bunch more times and get other little details and stuff from it. So let me know of your thoughts. I want to have a full-on conversation about this with you guys. That's why I make these videos, so I get to chat about these things. But I hope you enjoyed listening to that along with me. You can click this place to go to my previous reactions, or you can subscribe to miss next time I post a Dreamcatcher reaction. I will see you in the next video. Bye.